How's it going, guys? Welcome back to Philip Draws Comics. I'm Philip. That's my hand on the screen right now, drawing the image you see. And today we're going to do probably my most ambitious drawing that I've done for this channel. It's a picture I've composed of Batman fighting Bane. There's a couple of different influences and references being used throughout, and I'll give you a heads up when we get to each place. Right now you see me blocking in the image. Here right now, this is a picture I'm using as a reference for Batman's body here in the bottom corner. As we go along, I'm going to do a few adjustments, take some influence from some different images to try to make that my own. This picture started out in my head. I had a desire to draw the character of Bane, specifically the character of Bane from the latter half of Batman the Animated Series, specifically known as the New Batman Adventures era. I really like that version of Bane. He seems very intimidating as sort of a leather gimp, kind of like he's into some weird stuff, as opposed to his regular, earlier, more luchador style outfit. Took a couple of different tries to figure out the position of the body I wanted. In the end, I borrowed from this image of the Hulk and tried to twist the body a little bit to give me an idea of what the arms would look like in that position. Over his head, what Bane has is the bat signal. So this particular image could be seen as a recreation of a scene from an episode of Batman called Over the Edge. And if you haven't seen that episode, go ahead and stop what you're doing right now and go watch that episode, because it's one of the best episodes of Batman the Animated Series. I'm making some adjustments to Batman's body. Specifically, I'm using this image of Spider-Man from Marvel's new Ultimate Spider-Man line of comics. And I like that particular, the positioning of the arms there, make it look like Bane has got the drop on Batman, has surprised him. And I wanted Bane to be looming over Batman like he's about to shatter him with the bat signal. And in the background, I'm using some elements from one specific image, specifically this image by Jim Lee, and you're going to find from that picture the water tower, the moon, the Zeppelin, and the buildings in the background. I'm going to wedge them all over Batman's shoulder. As the image goes along, I think it probably would have looked better if I had made those a little smaller. They tend to sort of, I don't know if they steal focus, but they're definitely taking up as much real estate as the two characters, and I think they should have been more accents in the background as opposed to featured characters, if you know what I mean. As I'm going back and watching this video with you and seeing my original layout, I'm realizing that at this stage, this image right now is a better image than what I end up with at the end. The position of the hands and everything give that element of surprise that I was really impressed with. The problem becomes, as I have more and more trouble drawing the hands, I start using these cheat codes I've developed for just getting them out of the way, and it actually creates a poorer image. But we'll discuss that as we go further along. Like I said, the version of Bane we're drawing here is the Bruce Timm designed version from the cartoon, and I thought it would be kind of cool to take that design and instead of drawing it in that blocky Bruce Timm style, as you can see there again, I thought it would be cool to take essentially that costume and put it on a more realistic depiction of the character and speak more to that juxtaposition I'm always talking about in these videos. At one point, the design for this image was going to be the cartoon Bane drawn in a realistic style fighting the Adam West Batman. I had this image in my head of this being an Adam West Batman, and in his hand he's holding, instead of a canister of bat shark repellent, he's holding a canister of Bane repellent. It made my wife laugh. She thought it was kind of funny. But as this image went along, I realized I liked it so much I didn't really want to make it a joke image. I wanted to make it look as cool as possible. And at this stage, I think I'm still managing to do that. I've wrapped the cape around his right hand, which was a cheat to keep from having to draw it in that open palm pose. You can see me working on the bat signal up there. But then I make a mistake. I just can't get that other hand right either. And so I decided to just erase it, and it loses the surprise element that his body language had at the layout stage. Lesson learned. for me, an awful lot of these videos I've been doing have been sort of a double-edged sword. I can go back and watch myself redraw this thing over and over again, and I can pinpoint exactly where the mistakes are being made. I can't do anything about them, though, because, again, it's a video. That's the one aspect where I kind of am jealous of artists who know how to draw on tablets and can draw like on Photoshop and what have you. And then, if you go a couple steps too far, you just hit the undo button to get back to an earlier version. That's not an option I have here, drawing with pen and paper like an old man. You can see all the texture I put on that water tower. I tried really hard not to put flat blacks on anything in the background. A video I watched recently with the artist and inker Mark Morales had a useful tip about putting all your heavy blacks in the foreground to draw focus to what you want the people to look at. And so anything in the background you put less ink on, and as we go along I'm going to take that whiteout pen I love so much and try to thin out the lines on the images in the background. Here I am changing the position of the face. Originally I had the eyes, basically the mouth hidden by the pecs as he glared down at Batman. And I thought, well, what if we switched to what if we had him leaning up and screaming? Because again, I wanted to make sure we captured the whole design of the animated series version of Bane. Right now I'm laying down the inks, and that knee and shin looks really good. I think throughout the whole, hilarious in this whole drawing of Batman fighting Bane, the part I'm most proud of is that knee and shin. It actually really does look good. Putting out the lines for the muscles, and you can tell I'm doing very chicken scratchy, just throwing down the lines to kind of give an idea of shape. Don't worry, as we go along, I'm going to go back later with a pen and fill in and turn those ink blotches into actual shapes. I think the arms come across looking really well. You can see me, for lack of anything better to do, putting blacks under the bat signal to make Bane stand out. It's the technique we're going to use here on the cape. I'm going to use a solid black line to fill in the cape to make Batman stand out on it. You can see me be afraid to go in between the scallops on his forearm with that magic marker. I'm going to come back here in a second with a better, sharper pen and fill those in. And there's really a number of options, of ways I could have gone with this image at this point. You can see where I've roughed in where I want the shade to be on Batman's body. I want it to kind of disappear into the cape. And I'm laying down these loose lines now because I'm not 100% sure where I want the line to be. I think later in the video I make a mistake and I fill in this entire area with black. I should have kept the black, like the solid blacks, on the most inner parts of his body as if it was shifting. Otherwise, as you'll see when we get to it later, his whole body disappears into the blackness of the cape. One thing I've realized doing these drawings is different inks are different colors. So a magic marker black looks different than a drawing pen black. Historically, what I have done is I would draw something like this, use all these different inks, scan it into my laptop, and use Photoshop to kind of adjust the contrast to make it a flat black and white image, making it to where all the black lines are equal. Takes out the randomness of using different pens. I'm going to go back in a little bit and fill in. You see these white spots over Bane's shoulder. You don't really think about it at the time as you're laying the lines down, but it really does create sort of a shaggy effect. It kind of steals focus from your eyes in a way that you don't quite expect. So I'm learning in this video to really fill in the blacks on the ink stage. The face on Bane there is still kind of cartoony. It's more of that underjaw sticks out real far. You can see me erasing to make it a little clearer. I still, the more I draw, the more I find myself having to decide kind of where I want to be more cartoony and where I want to be more realistic. And I kind of like the idea of monster type characters like Bane having a little more unreality about them. Like his face can look a little more like a cartoon character's. I say that Batman's face is pretty stylized there. His chin is not quite as far out as Stan Smith from American Dad, but it's not too far off either. And so begins the part of the drawing that pretty much breaks me, the attempts to draw this hand. The irony is that's a pretty good hand. That's about as good as the hand looks. If I had just inked that in, I would have been fine, but I just got in my own head and kept, I think I erased this hand 7 different times, and in the end, just erase it completely and say to heck with it. Totally ruins the composition of the shot to me, taking that hand out. It loses all elements of surprise in his body language and just becomes a standard cool-looking Batman image. Part of me really wants to grab a light box and a fresh piece of paper and trace this image and try to draw a better version of it, something a little more in keeping with what I originally had in mind and something that uses the best elements of each version of this drawing. That in itself might actually make a pretty interesting video. That said, I'm kind of, I'll be completely honest with you, I'm kind of tired of this image. I think that's where a lot of my problems came in, is just my endurance meter ran out when we got to about this point of the video, or this stage in the drawing, I mean to say. Now we're going to take the sharpest pen I have and ink out the face. And basically what's happening here is I'm playing it as safe as possible to get that face on Batman to look as good as possible. I don't want to go wild or throw any black lines on there. As a result, I think it's going to end up being kind of a flat image on Batman's head. I do like how the cape is going to end up working out when I start bringing in the blue colored pencils on the cape. Just didn't want to risk messing up that face too much on Batman. Erasing all the stray pencil lines to give myself a clean inked image to work with. Yeah, as I'm looking at it now, I really like the way the shading was done on his body. If I'd have gone in and just filled in some black around the bottom of his bicep and the side of his chest and made it look like he was disappearing, gave it different stages like he was disappearing into the cape, that would have looked better than the solid black I put on here in a few minutes. Batman's a character that everybody loves. I'm old enough to remember the original Batmania that came out with the first Michael Keaton Batman movie in the 80s. I remember watching that and then seeing the commercials for this grim and gritty black leather Batman, and then they started showing the Adam West Batman. And I can remember even as a kid, like understanding the difference between, well, yeah, that's old Batman. It was happy-go-lucky Batman, and this is more like modern-day Batman. Even when I was 4 or 5 years old, I understood the difference between those two characters and wasn't terribly confused. And then later on, an episode of Tiny Toons would do a parody of Batman where the character Plucky Duck decided to become Bat Duck, and he goes through all these different iterations deciding what version of Bat Duck he wants to be. The grim and gritty Frank Miller, or the happy-go-lucky Adam West, or if he's got a incredibly long cape. It's that episode, turns out, was written by Paul Dini, who would go on to be one of the main writers for Batman, the animated series. Paul Dini is one of the best writers for Batman. If you get a chance, go try to find Kevin Smith's podcast, Fat Man on Batman, where he does episodes where he talks to creators that have worked on Batman. And there's several episodes with Paul Dini. And if you get a chance, go try to find it on YouTube or maybe on Kevin Smith's website. That's just if you're a fan of Batman, that's an amazing podcast to listen to, because he gets so many creatives, a lot from the comics, like Grant Morrison, Jeff Johns, people who Neil Adams does a series of podcasts with Kevin Smith talking about his time working on Batman, and so many of his just the things he talks about in terms of drawing have influenced my mindset going forward on how I draw. I think when I was growing up, I thought a real artist draws entirely out of his head, and that if you looked at something that was cheating, well, Neil Adams, one of the best comic book artists of all time, advocates not only copying but also like tracing. And the words of wisdom he gives is that, there's two places you could look for drawing references: inside your head and the rest of the entire world. And he says the stuff in your head isn't getting any better. So he really advocates using references when drawing, which is what I've been doing for this video series. So I always give you guys at the end of every video, I make sure to show you guys all the references I'm using and try to have them threaded throughout the video to show you what I'm looking at. I consider that just fair play when drawing something, letting you know all the tools and what have you I'm using. And then sometimes I'll end a video by suggesting you take these prompts and do your own thing. So far, to my knowledge, I've had no takers. But here we go, guys. This is pretty much the finished image. Like it says on the screen, like and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments, and be sure to let me know where you come down on Neil Adams' statements about using references and tracing, or if you think a real artist draws entirely out of their head like I did as a kid. Here now we got the references coming up for what I used in the drawing. Thanks again so much for watching the video, guys. This is definitely my longest video and my most ambitious drawing. It'll be interesting, even to me, to see whether or not next week I go back to my comfort zone of drawing just singular characters, or if I try to do more scene recreations like these. Join me next week and we'll find out together. Thanks, guys. Have a great day. Bye.